dust tasted like regret and grit. Silas blinked, pushing the brim of his worn hat lower against the relentless Arizona sun. He's been tracking the Barlow gang for 3 days, and the trail was growing colder with each mile deeper into the Superstition Mountains. 3 days since they robbed the stagecoach just outside Copper Canyon, leaving a trail of injured and terrified passengers in their wake. Silas was the man of many words, or many comforts. Just a weathered face, a cold peacemaker, and a grim determination that had kept him surviving in this unforgiving land. He's seen enough injustice to last a lifetime, and he's made it his burden to try and tip the scales however slightly towards what was right. He wasn't a hero, just a man doing what he could. He dismounted, letting his bay mare best graze on the sparse, thorny brush. The silence of the desert was deceptive, a tense quiet that held the promise of rattlesnakes, scorpions, and desperate men. He scanned the rocky terrain, his eyes sharp despite the glare. He's been told the Barlow gang were experienced, ruthless, led by a man called Jeb Barlow, a name whispered with fear in Copper Canyon and beyond. Jeb was a ghost, a legend, a man who seemed to vanish into thin air whenever the law got too close. He found what he was looking for, a faint tire track partially obscured by shifting sand. Fresh. The Barlows hadn't been far. He remounted, nudging Bess forward. He tracked them to a narrow canyon, a natural fortress of red rock and shadow. He could hear voices, muffled but distinct. He dismounted again, drawing his Colt. Silas, a voice called out. It was Deputy Hayes, a young man fresh out of the academy, eager to prove himself. He was a good kid, but green. Silas had reluctantly agreed to let him tag along. "Stay low," Silas muttered, his voice barely audible. They crept along the canyon wall, peering into a small clearing. The Barlow gang were gathered around a fire, roasting what looked like a stolen calf. There were 5 of them: a Jeb Barlow, a wiry man with a cruel smile, a hulking brute named Bart, a nervous young man called Finn, and 2 others, faces obscured by the shadows. "Looks like we got them," Hayes whispered, his voice trembling slightly. "Don't get ahead of yourself," Silas cautioned. "Let's see how they react." Suddenly, a figure emerged from the rocks. A Native American woman, her face painted with intricate patterns, approached the fire. She spoke to the gang in a language Silas didn't understand, her voice calm and measured. Jeb Barlow, apparently understanding her, responded with a harsh laugh. "Tell those old stories again, don't you, Nahka? Tell us how the spirits will protect us." Nahka was a shaman of the Apache, known throughout the region for her wisdom and connection to the land. She's often acted as a mediator between the settlers and the tribes, a delicate and dangerous role. Silas knew her, had traded with her on occasion, respected her knowledge. "They say the land remembers," Nahka said, her voice echoing in the canyon. "It remembers the suffering, the pain. It will not forget." Jeb Barlow sneered. "Just old wives' tales. The spirits ain't gonna help us against the law." He turned to Bart. "Round up the horses. We's moving on." As the gang began to scatter, Silas knew he had to act. He couldn't let them escape. "Hold it right there," he shouted, stepping into the clearing, his Colt drawn. The gang froze, their hands instinctively reaching for their weapons. "Silas," Hayes called out, his voice cracking with nervousness. "What are you doing?" "Just doing my job, Deputy," Silas replied, his eyes fixed on Jeb Barlow. "He's interfering with things you don't understand," Silas, Jeb said, his voice low and menacing. "This ain't your fight." "Stealing from innocent people is always my fight," Silas retorted. A tense standoff ensued. The desert air crackled with unspoken threats. Suddenly, Nahka stepped forward, placing herself between Silas and the gang. "This is a matter for the people of the land," she said, her voice firm. "Let me speak with Silas. The spirits guide me." Silas hesitated. He respected Nahka, trusted her judgment. He lowered his Colt slightly. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. "Listen," Nahka said. "The Barlows are desperate. They are driven by fear and hunger. They do not understand the consequences of their actions." She turned to Jeb Barlow. "The land demands justice, Jeb. But justice is not always about punishment. Sometimes it's about understanding." Jeb Barlow looked at Nahka, his eyes narrowed. For a moment, Silas thought he might listen. But then Bart, the hulking brute, lost his patience. "Enough of the squaw's nonsense," he roared, drawing his own weapon. Bart lunged at Silas, but Silas was faster. He fired, the bullet finding its mark. Bart crumpled to the ground, clutching his chest. The sudden violence shattered the fragile peace. The remaining gang members opened fire. Silas and Hayes returned fire, the canyon echoing with the roar of gunfire. Hayes was quick, but inexperienced. A bullet grazed his arm. He cried out in pain, stumbling backward. Silas kept firing, protecting the young deputy. He saw Finn, the nervous young man, trying to flee. Silas hesitated, but knew he couldn't let him escape. He fired, the bullet finding its mark. Finn fell, clutching his stomach. Barlow, seeing his gang falling around him, made a desperate move. He grabbed Nahka, holding a knife to her throat. One more stab, Silas, and the shaman dies. He snarled. Silas froze. He couldn't risk Nahka's life. Let her go, Jeb, he said, his voice low and steady. You want her, he's coming along, Jeb retorted. Silas knew he was walking into a trap, but he had no choice. He slowly holstered his Colt and stepped forward, leaving Hayes to tend to Finn and Bart. He was just a few feet from Barlow when a sharp whistle pierced the air. It was Nahka. She suddenly twisted, disarming Barlow with surprising strength. Before he could react, she plunged a small, obsidian knife into his chest. Barlow gasped, his eyes wide with shock. He collapsed to the ground, lifeless. The remaining gang members, demoralized by the loss of their leader, surrendered. Hayes, despite his injury, managed to apprehend them. As the dust settled, Silas looked at Nahka. Why? He asked. He was beyond redemption, she replied, her voice filled with sadness. The land demanded balance. She turned to the setting sun, her face etched with a mixture of sorrow and resignation. The spirits are restless tonight, Silas. There is much suffering in this land. Silas knew she was right. The conflict between the settlers and the tribes was far from over. The Barlow dam was just a symptom of a deeper wound. He looked at Hayes, who was tending to his injured arm. You all right, deputy? Hayes nodded, wincing in pain. Just a scratch, mister. Silas, just a scratch. Silas knew the young deputy was trying to be brave, but Silas had seen enough to know that the scars of this land ran deeper than any bullet wound. As they rode back towards Copper Canyon, Silas thought about Nahka's words, *the spirits are restless tonight*. He knew that the peace he had helped to restore was fragile, easily shattered. And he knew that he would be back, drawn to this land by a sense of duty, a desire for justice, and a growing understanding that the true battle was not against outlaws and gangs, but against the darkness that resided in the hearts of men. He looked up at the darkening sky and whispered a silent prayer for the restless spirits of the land. The work was far from over.